Today's Gemara in Yoma, Daf Yod Aleph, all the learning for this month, the month of Iyar, as we forge well into the Masechta of Yoma, is sponsored as a Schos Refuah Shlema, the month of Refuah Shlema, for Rivka Bas Sheva, as well as Naftali Siba and Michal Esther, by a generous friend of the Daf, Amir Tashem. The Chaylim should have a tremendous Refuah, the Schos of the entire Chabura, which I appreciate everyone's feedback, as well from the wonderful review sheets. Whoever wants, please reach out. They're on the website, ccdaf.org, which, as we always say, the most important is the Chazara, the clarity as we try to give. So the Chaylim, Rivka Bas Sheva, Naftali Siba, and Michal Esther should have a tremendous refuah. Of course, the rest of our chaylim and ben Vega Chaim and Sar Shem Simon Radio Sarbas Kanadi to Basim with Chaisay Yisrael and Middle East Chevrolet Shembas and Ami Shafik for Khanaf Alomini Teriva Shmo ben Til Dim Khan Reason Mil Chaibas in the Bracha with Tavi Musa then Enda Beshin Middle Simcha Tavi ben Abigail Fesha Simon Vega Divero in the Khilas Ben Asateli Huva ben Achmendo ben Taiba Besay Shachali Yisrael as well as Chashiv Atalia Basita and Menachemendo ben Elisheva. And I'm sorry I forgot to mention one last chayle, Sarah Bas Kayla also should have a tremendous refuah shlema. And that is today's daf. Let's break it up. Yud Aleph, daf Yud Aleph. We're on the bottom of Yud Amid Beis, and as we mentioned yesterday, today is Mezuzah Day. Hilchais Mezuzah on today's daf. Well, if we'll have time to mention some of the halachas, we will try. Perhaps we'll try to put up a separate share in Hilchas Mezuzah. Let's try to get there. Says the Gemara on the very bottom of Yud Amid Beis. Man Tana Lahad Tana Rabbanan. Who is the following Tana? Let's just speak out. Let's just remind everyone where we're holding. We're holding within a machlekes Rav Yehuda and the Chachamim. Did the Lishkas Bar Hedjin have a mezuzah? Yes. Everyone agreed during the 7 days that the Kohen Gadol was there was a mezuzah. The question is, why was that mezuzah there? The Chachamim said it's a real obligation. Rav Yehuda said there's no obligation, it's a din d'Rabbanan. What is that machlekes between Rav Yehuda and the Chachamim? That was yesterday's daf. We had a machlekes Rava and Abaye. Abaye said everyone agrees that the 7 days you needed the mezuzah, a real obligation, even Rav Yehuda. The machlekes was about the rest of the year. Abaye learned that the rest of the year, according to the Chachamim, there was a mezuzah on the Lishkas Bar Hedjin. According to Rav Yehuda, there was no gezerah to put it there. Rav said, no, that is not the machlekes. It's a larger machlekes. The machlekes by Sukkah, machlekes by Lishkas Bar Hedjin. By Sukkah, Rav Yehuda diras kava, you need a mezuzah. Rabbanan held diras aray. As well, by us, by the Lishkas Bar Hedjin, Rav Yehuda held it's a forced dwelling. The Kohen Gadol didn't have a choice. Forced dwelling is not called dwelling, which obviously everyone is hearing very simply. It would sound like a jail is a forced dwelling. You don't need a mezuzah there as well, which is the opinion of many paiskim. Others mention that no, jails nowadays, they might be forced, but they're so nice, they're so beautiful. Maybe there is a reason to be mechayev a mezuzah. Of course, if there's goyim there, that's automatically a reason. Any room, house, dwelling, building with goyim that are going to be mavazah the mezuzah, you're not allowed to put up a mezuzah. That was the opinion of Abaye. Now we continue. Mantana Lad Tana Rabbana, moving along to Yud Aleph Amid Aleph. Who is the following Tana? Kol Hasharim Shayisham Layalem Mezuzah. All the Sha'arim, all the gates in the Beis Hamikdash did not have a mezuzah chutz. Mishar Nikanar. The only gate that had a mezuzah was Shar Nikanar. Shalefnei Mimenu Lishkas Bar Hedjin. Because inside of it was the Lishkas Bar Hedjin. We'll just point out parenthetically where the Lishkas Bar Hedjin was and how Shar Nikanar was opening into Lishkas Bar Hedjin is a bit difficult. We're going to leave that for now. Today we're going to focus on the mezuzah aspect. But says the Brisa clearly that Lishkas Bar Hedjin had a real mezuzah. Says the Gemara, Leimar Rabbanan Ivlei Rav Yehuda. This sounds like the Rabbanan that it's a real obligation to put mezuzah on Lishkas Bar Hedjin. This does not sound like Rav Yehuda that it's some rabbinic decree later. Di Rav Yehuda, he gave like zera v'anan nikam nikar zera like zera. According to Rav Yehuda, the whole obligation on Lishkas Bar Hedjin is a din d'Rabbanan. So they're going to go and make a gzera to put on Shar Nikanar, another d'Rabbanan. We don't say gzera like zera. Answers the Gemara, no. Afilu tema Rav Yehuda. Kula chad gezeri, as we see many times, it's always difficult to know when we're allowed to see this answer or not. Besides, there was one gezera, Lishkas Bar Hedjin, and Shar Nikanar. Taner Rabbanan. Once we started the topic of mezuzah, we go well into mezuzah. Bisharecha, it says in the Torah, Uchsaftem al mezuzahs beisecha ubisharecha. The mezuzahs on your house and on your gate. Says the Gemara, what is bisharecha? Echad shari batim, your house, the gate of your house. V'echad shari chatziros, the gate of your courtyard. V'echad shari medinos, of the city. V'echad shari yaris, of the town. Yesh bahen chayvas mezuzah. They have an obligation of mezuzah limakayim, to God. Why? Mishum shenemar uchsaftem al mezuzahs beisecha uvish arecha. All these places, houses, courtyards, cities, and towns are obligated in mezuzah. Of course, the wording of this obligation of mezuzah lamakaim to God is an interesting wording, perhaps pointing out that when someone puts up a mezuzah, he should not be doing it for the ulterior motive of all the wonderful skula and shmira that the mezuzah affords, but rather doing it for God. But says the Gemara, that is the obligation. Within that obligation, there's such an important rule. Says Abayit Rav Safra, the Avulei de Mechuzah. The gates of Mechuzah. My time Allah of the Rabbanim mezuzah. What's going on? There's no mezuzah. Amar le hanu chizuk leakra de kuvihu Davida. The gate is there as support for the Tower of Kubi. What do we see for this Gemara? One of the most important rules in all of mezuzah, that when a room, a doorway, a wall, a something is there as support, it's not there to be a door, then there is no obligation of mezuzah. To give the simplest case, if you have two rooms, and which often people do when they do renovations, and you knock down one wall, make it one tremendous room, one big room with one big function, one tremendous dining room, the table smack in the middle. But it happens to be that when they broke open the room, they left up a bit of the doorpost. Why? It's a support beam. They couldn't take it down. So do you have to put up a mezuzah there? Say the Paiskim, no, based off of this Gemara. It's only there for support. Support is not an obligation of mezuzah. I'll point out, often it's not as clear. Often it does split the room in half. You made it one big room, but it's still two halves of the room, the eating part of the kitchen and the kitchen part of the kitchen. So in such a case, there very well might be an obligation, perhaps an obligation, misafik of mezuzah. But that is the rule, that when something is there for support, there's no obligation of mezuzah. Amar le v'akar de kuve gufa tibai mezuzah. What about the tower itself of Kubi? Why did the tower have a mezuzah? The watchman of the jail lived in the tower. The Tanya we learned in a Raisa. So based on Knesset, a shul that had a dwelling for the chazan of the shul, so we see the dwelling for one person is enough. So why did the Tower of Kubi have a mezuzah? Parenthetically, we see that a shul is only obligated if there's a person who lives there. If there's no person who lives there, seemingly, there's a patur of a mezuzah on a shul, which we know most of our shuls have mezuzahs. The simple reason being that our shuls are also used to learn, and a base medrash is a big machlekes, but we're machmer to put a mezuzah on a base medrash as well. We use our shuls often for other items. They're built with a tanai, with a condition. We use them for eating and sleeping and other items. Not sleeping, but eating and other things. So, besides the Gemara, so why did the Tower of Kubi have a mezuzah? Elam Rabbi Misham Sakana. It's sakana to put a mezuzah there. Titania, we learned in the Brisa. This is similar to the rule I mentioned before, that when you have a partnership with a guy, you don't put a mezuzah as well. Whenever there's a place, if it's going to be in a public area, you can't have a mezuzah. If it's going to be a sakana. Titania, mezuzah is yachid, if that is pamayim b'shavua, twice every 7 years. V'shal rabim, pamayim b'yovel, twice every 50 years. He was checking the mezuzahs in the upper shuk shel Sipari. One of the officers found him and ultimately gave him a terrible fine. So what do we see? We see that if it's a part of a sakana, then you could have a patur from mezuzah. So too by us, they didn't have the mezuzah on the Tower of Kubi because it was sakana. The Gemara now asks parenthetically on the story, you shouldn't get damaged when you're doing a mitzvah. So if he was going to check the mezuzahs, why did he get damaged? Answers the Gemara, important rule. If it's a known damage, that's different. We've had this pasuk before. Shmuel said to God, how could I go up? Vishama Shaul Argeni. Vishama Shaul, maybe Shaul's going to hear. He's going to kill me. Hashem. What does Hashem respond? Hashem doesn't say, what do you mean you're going up to do the coronation? You're going up to do a mitzvah. God responds, take a cow in your hand, take an animal, look like you're making a carbon, and then they won't bother you. So what do we see? We see when it's vati ezeka, kava ezeka, certain damage, do not rely on the fact that you're doing a mitzvah. Vamarta, and Hashem says to Shmuel, you should say, Hashem Basi, you're going to bring a carbon for Hashem. Tani Rav Kahana continues in the Gemara, Kamei de Rav Yehuda, Beis HaTavin, Beis HaBakar, Beis Eitzim, Beis HaItris, V'tur Min HaMezuzah. More Dina Mezuzah. Houses of straw, houses of cattle, a barn, houses of wood, a storehouse are all potter from Mezuzah. Why are they potter from Mezuzah? Says the Brisa, says Rav Kahana, I should say, Mimnei Shanoshim Ne'oisis Bahen. Because women use them. We have these rooms, storage rooms, and barns, and other areas that they're potter from Mezuzah, says Rav Kahana, because women use them. What do they use them for? before? The woman used to bathe in the barn, whatever that means. So because the woman is bathing there, she's undressed simply, therefore it's pater from mezuzah, says Rav Kehana. Amrli Rav Yehuda, time of the Reichatzais. Is that why it's pater? What does it sound like? Hastama, if you have any of these rooms, cattle's barn, storehouses are chayavin. Vatanya, we learned Rav Esbaka with 2 minutes mezuzah. A barn is pater because a barn stinks and smells. So why are you, Rav Kana, teaching me the reason why the Beis HaBakar is pater because a woman bathed there? It should be pater because it stinks. Ella Rav Yehuda argues. My neusais, what does it mean, neusais? Miskashtois. It means that the women use it to put on their makeup. It's their powder room. And this is Pshat in the Brisa, says Rav Yehuda. You got it wrong, Rav Kahana. Even though the women put up their jewelry there, still they are pater. Still the room is pater, meaning it's not telling me the reason it's pater is because they wash. Rather, it's telling me even though you would think it's an obligation, meaning it's generally pater because it's Beis Bakar. It's pater because it's a room that stinks. But maybe because the fact that women go and women put on makeup, that's a reason to obligate it, still the Bryce says it's pater. Rav Kahana responds, the last narrow line. Is that true? Vatani learned in a Brisa, first medium-sized line, Rav Esbaka b'tu min hamezuzah. We see clearly if a woman uses a room to put on makeup, there's a chiyuv. Says Rav Kahana, what are you going to answer me? Miskashto is tanoi. You're going to tell me it's true. You found the Bryce that says if they put on makeup, it obligates. So you're telling me it's machlokes tanoim. One Bryce that says it's pater, one Bryce says it's chayiv. So you know what I'm going to answer you, says Rav Kahana? A regular barn is a machlokes tanoim. The Tanya, as we learned in a Brisa. Now the Gemara is going to quote a Brisa. A Brisa that's going to have, we'll break the Brisa into 3 parts, and the Gemara is going to show up both Rav Kahana and Rav Yehuda learn up this Brisa. Beisecha miyuchalecha. Says the Brisa, it says Beisecha, uchsavtem hamezuzah Beisecha, your house. What does that come to say? Miyuchalecha has to be for you. Prala Beisa Tevin, Beisa Bakar, Beisa Eitzim, Beisa Oisresh, Shabbatur min hamezuzah. Part number 1 of the Brisa. If you have a storage room, a wood room, a shed, all these places, pater mezuzah. V'yesh. Part number 2 in the Brisa, part number 2 says, some people say you're obligated. Be'emes Amru, part number 3 in the Brisa, really, Beis HaKisi, Beis HaBurski, Beis HaMerchatz, a bathroom, a tannery, a shower room, Beis HaTfila, a mikvah, V'shanashim, the Eis B'em, a room that a woman uses, are Beturim min hamezuzah. 3 parts of the Brisa. Part number 1, Beisecha comes to exclude storage rooms. Part number 2, some say you're obligated. Part number 3, bathrooms, tanneries, shower houses are pater. So both Rav Kahana and Rav Yehuda will explain this according to their opinions. Rav Kahana mataris to me, Rav Yehuda mataris to me. Rav Kahana mataris to me, Beisecha miyuchalecha, Prala Beisa Tevin, Beisa Bakar, Beisa Eitzim, Beisa Oisresh, Shabbatur min hamezuzah, Bistam. Rav Kahana is going to explain, you know what the first part of the Brisa means? That these rooms are pater. That's the first shita. V'yeshem echayvim bistam. And that's the 2 Brises that disagree whether there's an obligation on a barn or not. And part number 3 of the Brisa, be'emes amru, beis hakisi, beis habursi, beis hamerchas, beis hatfila, shanashim oises behen. My ne'oises, what does it mean that women use it? Roichatzos, which is Rav Kahana's shita that holds that bathing is peturim min hamezuzah. Says the Gemara, yani hainu merchatz. If when the Brisa means that they're using the room, it means that they're bathing. It's the same thing as a merchatz. Answers Rav Kahana, shmina and merchatz the Rav, shmina merchatz the Yachid. It teaches me 2 types of bathhouses. It's a lot of steam, a lot of filth. Aval merchatz the Yachid, your personal showers, it's not. So Rav Kahana dissected this price exactly like a shita. We have one opinion saying a barn is obligated, a storage room is obligated. We have another opinion saying a barn and storage room is pater. And then we have teaching me that when a woman bathes in a room, it is pater. We already learned a bathhouse, that's a public, but also teaching me an extra chiddush of a singular room. That's Rav Kahana. Rav Yehuda mataris to the me'achi kadani. 5 lines to the bottom. Beisecha beisam yuchlecha prat. Beisavin beisabakar beiseitzim beisaitzreis. Shabbatura min hamezuzah. When says Rav Yehuda, afilu miskashtes. He has those words in. The Brisa means it's pater even if a woman uses it for makeup. V'yesh mechayvin. And the second part of the Brisa that says there's an obligation is referring to those that obligate for putting on makeup. Aval stam divriyakol pater. A regular room that's not used for jewelry, just a regular barn storage room, is pater. The end of the Brisa part 3. Why? Because it's very stinky. That is part how Rav Kana explains, that is how Rav Yehuda explains. Ask the Gemara, will Rav Yehuda stamei divrei akol pater? According to Rav Yehuda, the stam comes out that everyone is pater. V'atanya, is that true? You told me, Rav Yehuda, that mistam, a regular barn, a regular storage room is pater. V'atanya, we learned in the brayso, lengthy brayso on deck. Beisharecha, what does that mean? Echashari batim, echashari chaseres, echashari medinais. This should sound familiar. We had this a few minutes ago. Your gates means the gates of your house, your courtyard, your cities. V'chachari yaros for efes v'lulin umiteven v'yitzis yayin v'yitzis shemen chayavim b'mizazah. It says, and your gates of your cities, and v'refes lulin, which is your chicken coops, and your straw, and your wine storage houses, and your oil storage houses are all obligated in mezuzah. A clear kasha on Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda said these places are pater. We see clearly in the brayso they're chayiv. Now we just continue quoting the brayso. Yochel shani marbai. We think we also come to include. Moving along to Alva Mebeis, I would think maybe we also come to include a small house that's used for a guard, or a pavilion, or a porch. That's be a room that you live in. You do not live in them. We'll just point out many of our porches obviously will have an obligation. Similarly, leave it at that. But the Brisa continues. I would think we include maybe all these rooms, a bathroom, a tannery, a wash house, a mikvah are all included. Tamalomer bayis, ma bayis also lekavoid. Just like a house is used for dignified actions. Avkol also lekavoid. Yatu elu shenasuyin lekavoid. These rooms, a bathroom is not a kavoid room, so there's no mizas on it. Yochel shani marba farabayis, va'alishkes va'zarais. Maybe the rooms of the Beis Hamikdash should also be included. Tamalomer bayis, ma bayis shuchol, avkol shuchol. Only rooms that are mundane. Which is one of the reasons a shul is excluded, because it's kaidesh. The Beis Hamikdash, says the Gemara to Yofta, that is a clear disproof to the opinion of Rav Yehuda, because Rav Yehuda held that everyone agrees a Beis Habakar, a Beis Hatevin, a storage room, a wood room is pater, and we see clearly this brisa held that you're chayiv. Parenthetically, the end of the brisa taught us some other fabulous yisaidais, taught us the reason why a bathroom is excluded because it's not a Beis Kavod, taught us the reason why the Beis Hamikdash is excluded because it's Kodesh. And that is the brayso. Says the Gemara, Tani Rav Shmuel Bar Yud Kamei de Rava, continuing the theme of Hilchos Mezuzah. We're about 10 lines down Yud Aleph Amid Beis. Shisha Sharim B'Turim Min HaMezuzah. There are 6 gates which are pater from mezuzah. What are the 6 gates? Let's count carefully. Beis HaTevin, Beis HaBakar, Beis HaEitzim, Beis HaOitzer, Shar Madai, V'Shar Sheina Me'Kura, V'Shar Sheina Gvayod. 6 gates. 6 gates. That's 7 gates. What's going on? You told me there are 6 and you counted 7. Shar HaModai. Tanai, the Shar HaModai, the median gate. What's the median gate? That is an arched gate, as you see on the side of your Gemara. An arched gate is a machlekes Tanaim. What's the machlekes Tanaim of an arched gate? The Tanaim learned to the Brayso. Kippah. Just memories of Gemara and Shabbos. We have a kippah, like a kippah. We have an archery. Rameir obligates, the Chachamim pater. Bishavim, everyone agrees. If on the sides, before it starts curving, if the sides are straight for 10 tfachim, then it curves. That's not called a kippah. Everyone agrees it's obligated. Amar Abaye, the kuliyam, another thing. Kavaya yod ve'ing beragla gimel v'lav klumi. If it's 10 tfachim tall, but it's not 4 tfachim wide, at the bottom 3 tfachim, which is really this picture, to magnify on the side of the Gemara, this picture over here, as you see it curves the whole way, the whole time it's curving in. What's going on over there is there's not 4, it has to obviously be 4 wide. The 4 wide starts less than 3 tfachim up. Meaning, within the first 3 tfachim, it starts going narrow. So what we means is, as soon as that point, what happens is, we know love it, and the whole thing falls down. You don't have a doorway at all. So says Abaye, everyone agrees, if within the first 3 tfachim of height, it gets narrower than 4, everyone agrees it's not called a doorway. Inami, yesh biragla gimel, if within the first 3, ve'in gavoya yod, if it's not 10 tall, v'lav klumi, then it's also not good. Loy nechliku, what's the machlokes? El be'gaiva yod, v'ish gimel. It's 10 tall, and there's a 3 tfachim gap at the bottom where it's 4, and then it starts getting narrower. But you could chisel it out to get the 4. Rameir Savar Chaykin Lashlim, chisel out. Rabbanan Sabri Ein Chaykin Lashlim. Here's your picture, which you've seen many times in the Gemara and Shabbos. As you see over here, that for 3 Tfachim, courtesy of Hartskull, that for 3 Tfachim over here, it's 4 wide, and then it starts getting narrow. So the question is, do we say Chaykin Lahashlim? Do we go and we could carve out that area in order to make it a 10x4 doorway? That is going to be the Machlekes, Rameir, and the Chachamim. Says the Gemara, and that's the end of that discussion. A little bit further, Tanarab Anan, Beis HaKnesses, a shul, Ubeis Isha, a woman's house, Ubeis HaShutvim, a house of partners, Chayeves b'mezuzah, is obligated in mezuzah. Says Gemara Pshita, of course. Mao the time I would have thought Beisechav lo Beisa, Beisechav lo Batehem. You would have think, you know what the pasuk comes to teach me? Beisecha, and not her house. Beisecha, and not a plural house of partners. Kamash Malan, it teaches me that they are obligated, even a woman's house and even a partner house. Says Gemara, how do you know? Maybe it's Beisecha, not a woman's house, Beisecha, not a partner's house. Amar Kra, says the Torah. What is the reward of mezuzah? You get a long life. Of course, women also need long life. Partners also need long life. So they are included. Ela Beisecha Lamali. So why do we need the pasuk of Beisecha? Kiderava Damarava. Derech Biascha. Which side do you put the mezuzah on? We know the right, but what's the reason the right? Because the way you go into the house, Derech Biascha. And how do you go into the house? When you walk into the house, you put your right foot in first. Therefore, that's why it goes on the right side of the house. How many fabulous dinim we've learned the mezuzah. Let's take it for one more minute. Tani Idach. We learned in another brisa. These places have a din of Tuma Negayim. Says Gemara, Pshita, of course they are. What's the reason you would think not? So Mao, the time I would have thought to Bashar Loya Bayis. It says in the pasuk, and the one who comes into the house, Loy V'loy La, Loy V'loy Lahen, a similar drasha. By Tzaras, it says he comes into Loy. You would think it's only you, but not a female's house, not a La. Loy, and not a plural house, Lahen. Kamash Malon, to teach me there is a din of Negayim, a din of Tzaras on their house. Mamish last week's parsha. Ve'imal Chanami, maybe they are exempt. Amar Kra says in the Torah, the base Eretz Achuzaschem. The pasuk says with regard to Tzaras, it's going to be the house of your Achuzaschem, your inheritance. It just says bias, which comes to include everything. Eluloi Lamali. So why does it say loy? Answers the Gemara. Mishamiyached Beisai loy. This means that Tzaras comes in a house who keeps his house to himself. She'enoi roitze lahashel kelav. Someone who doesn't want to give out his kelim. Vaymer, and he says She'enoi Kadosh Baruch Hu mefarsamai. God's not going to tell anyone. So what happens when he has to clear out his house because of Saras? So this comes to exclude. Again, someone who doesn't lend items, he's going to get Saras, and God's going to expose the whole world that he had all these items he's not lending. This comes to exclude. If you lend your kelim to other people, then you will not get Saras. Why? Because there's no reason to expose your house. The wonderful lima that we're learning, the power of doing Gemilas Chasadim, of lending things to others. We'll leave it over here, but we'll pick up with the basic Knesses tomorrow.